The nearest brick, the nearest bottle, whatever came to hand, I just picked it up and started throwing it.
There were police cars abandoned in a haphazard fashion, maybe 3, 4, 5 or more.
They had to back off, you know what I mean? And they couldn't, some of them couldn't even get in their cars and reverse up the road. They had to run.
We didn't know what to do. There was cops struggling and fighting with people. The police were outnumbered, and this was on a scale that I'd never seen before.
It was great. It was like what you always wanted to see. You always wanted to be a policeman, innit? That's just how it went.
We eventually got back in the vehicles. We were all told to leave the area and go back to Brixton. So we did. We got in our vehicles and drove back.
With surprise on their side, the 100-strong crowd had beaten 30 police officers into retreat.
I felt at ease with myself. I didn't feel like I'd done something wrong. I just felt like I'd evened the score.
With 6 officers injured and 4 police vehicles attacked, Brixton's police had been humiliated. But both sides believed the battle was over.
As far as I was aware, that was it. You know what I mean? They got a good arse in and this would be it, you know?
But now, stories were spreading about Michael Bailey, the stabbed man who'd sparked the unrest.
In the night, there was nothing else to talk about.
We was all talking about it, and people knocking on the door.
There was rumors around spreading that Michael had died. People were saying, oh, that, what kind of thing that? Why, how him for dead?
If he is dead, it was definitely because of the police, because he was there for quite a while on the floor.
The police stab up somebody, that's what alerted us. The police stab up somebody. And that went around Brixton like wildfire. The police have actually killed a youth. And we thought, oh my God, they really got it in for us now.
But the injured man wasn't dead. He was recovering in hospital. So in a bid to calm local tempers, the police called in community leaders.
You reach a point where you can't take anymore. We're going to do something about it. What we're going to do, you don't even know. But you start doing something.
On the surface, Brixton looked peaceful. Community leaders pleaded with the police to keep it that way by stopping Swamp 81, the operation that had sparked so much local anger.
If I'd have withdrawn, a lot of people would have seen that as surrender, and also it would have laid me open to the charge of failing to police the area properly. It would have been beyond belief to have withdrawn police because somebody said, oh, I think you're doing it all wrong. I had a responsibility not only to Riot Row, but also to the people in Brixton.
Feelings were running high. Violence had erupted just hours before, but the police ignored the black community's advice and decided Swamp 81, the hated war on street crime, would continue.
The police can only police with the consent of the local community. And where the local community do not consent to the way in which the police operate, then there is going to be trouble.
Saturdays, as a parish priest, my mind would have been concentrating on Palm Sunday the following day and getting things ready for that.
That morning, 48 plainclothes officers were getting ready to go out on patrol in Brixton to continue their operation.
There were a lot of people there, and I do recall it felt, yeah, there was some tension in the air, but I couldn't put my finger on more than that.
People who used to sleep till 3 o'clock in the afternoon were there in Brixton at 11 o'clock, just waiting to see what might happen next.
Brixton looked a little more fuller than it did. Plus, there was a lot more police there.
They're still stopping and searching people. They weren't interested in, like, let's calm it down because of what happened yesterday. It was still an intimidating kind of situation.
That's the first time I could say we was ready for confrontation and we was waiting for something to react against.
That thing came just before 5. A minicab driver came back to his base in Atlantic Road, just off the front line.
That's where the minicab place used to be. He was an African minicab driver by the name of Wadada.
A few minutes later, 2 plainclothes officers stopped and searched the driver and his cab for drugs.
So anyway, they searched the car, they didn't find any drugs because obviously the man didn't have no drugs, he's just a minicab driver.
As news of the incident with the cab driver spread through Brixton, a crowd began to gather.
I remember kids running through the market. One guy kind of ran, and then 2 followed, and 10 followed, and so on.
You're running because you're excited, because things is happening and you're not involved.
And then when I actually got onto Atlantic Road, I couldn't believe the numbers. Just a mass of people. I thought, yeah, this is all good.
Outside the minicab office, a row was breaking out. Now, according to one of the police officers, he was threatened by a man in the crowd.
And he walked across and he stood on my foot. So I got up and I pushed him off. And he staggered back like a couple of steps and he came forward again, so I hit him. Next thing I knew, about 20-odd police officers in uniform officers came running across the street. And I said, so what, you're gonna let him arrest me?
When the police van arrived to take Johnny Brixton away, the crowd moved in.
Anything could happen after this, anything. And that's when we realised, when we heard the sirens approaching us, this is where you got to stand up and fight now, and this is going to be the moment.
By then, the police had picked me up. I was, picked me up off the floor, and they threw me into the back of the van.
And that was rocked to the sides, and people were trying to squeeze in and kick it and smashing the windows.
Hundreds of youths, black and white, were ready for battle at the top of the front line. But neither police nor rioters were prepared for the scale of events to come. The police van tore away, the first bricks were thrown, and desperate calls for reinforcements went out across the Met.
We were hearing police officers screaming, absolutely screaming for assistance. And to be quite honest with you, I had a cold chill that came over me. People were cut off, people were calling for help. So it did start to build up a picture for us before we got there.
When reinforcements arrived at the top of the front line, the trouble seemed to be over.
It was like driving into a ghost town, yes. It was very eerie, very quiet. We could still hear the radio going, so we knew that there were things going on, but we couldn't see it. We were all from different areas, nobody knew each other. But a dozen police officers is quite good, so we thought we were quite competent to hold that road and not let anybody through to the shopping centre, so we were quite jolly and happy. This was our target. Don't let anybody through here into Brixton town. We were going to hold it under all circumstances. I could hear police officers round the other road as well, which sounded like they're under attack. This is when we saw our first rioters. And as we moved up to Rowton Road, that's when these people saw us and we became their targets. I can see the people coming down the road now.
We'd desperately search for stones or anything, bricks. Once we find a piece, we'd pick it up, take a bit of a run up, charge down the road, throw it into the ranks, and just hurl it. Look around for another piece of brick or whatever, and the sky was just darkened.
Bricks started to rain down. We had no shields. I remember at one stage grabbing hold of a dustbin lid. We were retreating. We were definitely retreating. We had to for our own safety.
In that initial period, the first half hour, the police had absolutely no control whatsoever, which was very empowering, very, right, let's bring it to them.
By 6 o'clock, the police were forced back to the top of Railton Road. They were already outnumbered, but more people, black and white, were arriving all the time.
There was a group of us up Brixton Hill, and we were walking back towards Brixton when few people were running up and there was police sirens going off everywhere. and somebody told us that it had kicked off big time down in the line.
I think I got a phone call from a friend saying that there's something's happening in Brixton. It was a riot, and I didn't know what a riot was, so it was a bit of a shock. I remember thinking, what's a riot? And then went down to investigate, as you do.
I mean, everywhere was getting smashed at once. People were just getting into the shops, Woolworths, Bon Marsh, every jeweller's in town was getting done. A lorry was hijacked by a couple of lads on Brixton Road and driven into the jeweller's window, straight through the jeweller's window. And the window was so thick, plate glass or whatever, it just rolled down like a carpet.
I think it was at that point in my mind, I just thought, well, I'm going to try and get as many things as possible.
It was like ants to honey. There were so many people in there, just diamond rings, sovereigns rolling down the pavements.
I sort of dragging stuff and things were on the floor, jewellery and rings. And then you sort of put what you could in your pockets. And I felt really elated. I thought, right, I've got some jewellery now. I don't know how I'm going to wear it, but I've got some jewellery.
We were getting something that we'd always wanted, that we weren't able to afford. And nobody was telling us what we couldn't do and what we could do. We were doing what we wanted to do.
The chief superintendent at Brixton phoned me and said, it's getting very ugly down here. Streams of youths, mostly black, running up down the streets and windows have been smashed. And I think you ought to come down. And I said, I couldn't agree more. So I took off my own car and went down there.
The police had lost total control of the place. You'd have like 100 people, 150 people throwing bricks and bottles at the police while the looters were looting. So the police couldn't get near there to catch any looters.
Commander Fairburn arrived to a complete breakdown of law and order. Mayhem on this scale hadn't been witnessed that century and proved just how many in the community felt alienated by the police.
Burning vehicles, rioters, policemen withdrawing. It was frightening to a certain extent. It was unnerving, and it was very sad.
Seeing his men beaten back to the top of the front line, Commander Fairburn immediately ordered equipment and reinforcements.
We finally got our shields and people were bringing them up to people in the front line. We came up the road, but nobody knew how to use them, and we were locked in one line. We became Aunt Sally's. We couldn't move because the idea of a shield is to go forward, to push the crowd back. And I remember being locked up, and I remember seeing this bricks coming over, and there's nothing I could do. I couldn't bring my shield up to defend myself. I couldn't bring the shield down because it was just locked there. I had traffic officers to one side of me and admin staff that had never seen a shield, women police officers that were not trained in shields those days. So all they were doing were hiding behind their shields, which we really should have gone forward.
Whilst the police were locked up behind their shields, the rioters were preparing to move the battle up a gear.
There was a sense of that after that first stone, maybe a bigger stone, maybe a bigger brick, maybe something even more evil to throw.
Later on in the evening, then the new element came in, which was never seen before, and there's just a difference, and it was a potent weapon as well. It was called a petrol bomb.
They just suddenly appeared. I don't know who was arranging them or whatever, but they were there on a curb. I was scared, I have to admit. I was scared at that point.
Eventually, when we unlocked, we went forward. Then as we went forward as we should do, in groups of 3, but keeping in line. And the faster we went, the faster they ran away. And in the end, we were winning. We were winning Railton Road.
For the first time in 24 hours, the police had seized the advantage. At that precise moment, the rioters unleashed their deadly weapon.
A milk bottle smashed in front of me. So we were a bit worried because milk bottles can injure anyway, and so we sort of stepped back. But then when the next one came on and it hit, I mean, you know, what can you do against fire? The petrol bomb was hitting you flat on, and the petrol was going underneath the shields and then coming up and burning the foam underneath.
To see those polices putting their tail between their legs and hightailing it down the road was a sight to behold. It was just a wonderful sight.
They were just all over the place. As I remember it, they were scared.
It was the first time petrol bombs had ever been thrown on the British mainland. Decades of antagonism fueled the rioters' fury.
That was the mode of everybody. Kill or be killed.
People were screaming and shouting, and people were setting alight, and it was quite horrendous. It was quite horrendous.
I remember the flashback to that police van moment with a boot on my neck and how I felt. Why should I stop mid-throw and say to myself, this is wrong, what you're doing is wrong? They were the enemy. Simple as that.
Not a nice experience. And you could see the ruddy things coming at you as well, that's the thing.
Crouched behind their riot shields, the police withstood
Most were
many...
hit by either stones, bottles or Molotov cocktails.
Brixton, a South London area of high unemployment, was under siege.
Quite unlike anything London has seen.
My abiding memory of Brixton was Brixton on fire. I'd never, ever seen anything like this.
Journalists and news crews were arriving in Brixton in force, expecting to find a race riot between black and white. Instead, they met all-out war between the police and the local community.
The hostility between the black young people in particular and the Metropolitan Police was something I hadn't encountered before, and I wasn't fully aware of, I must confess, until that night.
By now, the rioters were holding the whole of Railton Road. And they were determined to stop anyone in a uniform, not just the police, from entering their territory.
I'd only been driving for 2 weeks, just qualified for 2 weeks. So I was really excited being a driver. We just came through a police cordon at Brockwell Park. And just as we got through the first